This is America Decides. My name is Eche Sikanku. This is where we take a bite at what is happening on the international stage, but specifically in the USA, where there is a very, very heated ongoing campaign for the next presidency. And of course, we do know how impactful this is for the country and for the rest of the world as well. So this afternoon, we put the spotlight on two towering figures in American politics. They've dominated the headlines and dominated the narratives. Former President Donald Trump and incumbent President Joe Biden. Over the past week, we've looked at some of the issues that have been dominating the race. But today, we delve into the personalities that are at the center of this race. As the nation braces for another momentous election, questions abound, debates are ravaging, and discussions are unending. Key among them, the various issues that are being discussed, is the question of if former President Donald Trump can stage a comeback after his tumultuous term that saw him losing to Joe Biden, the former vice president of Barack Obama, who eventually made it to the White House and the most powerful seat in the nation and the world. However, Biden's presidency has weathered a lot of storms. There have been a lot of criticisms and many challenges. Key among them is his age and his cognitive and mental abilities. We'll be seeking answers to these questions from a political scientist shortly before we even go way deeper into this. But for the starters, we are going to have a roundup of a key amount of issues, key events that have occurred this week in the American political arena. It's match, set, and go. But before then, let's look at the data. Well, at present, data from the Federal Electoral Commission indicates that the Biden campaign has more money to spend than Donald Trump's. And if you follow the politics there, money is essential, money is key, money determines who is able to travel across the expanse of the country, who is able to bombard the airwaves with advertisements, and who is able to do a lot more grassroots engagements. And this revelation has come up very recently following a mega fundraising event organized by the Democratic presidential campaign, which, it's nothing we've ever seen, something we've never seen before. It headlined two former presidents and a current president. That's 3 against 1. Former President Bill Clinton, former President Barack Obama, and incumbent President Joe Biden. That's a lot of star power on the campaign trail, coming together to combine their resources and their celebrity status to raise money for the Democratic campaign and for Joe Biden. According to the Biden campaign, the star-studded event raked in as much as about $25 million. By any measure, a record-breaking figure. In this sense, the New York City-based program, or fundraiser, has come as a huge boost for President Biden. And he needs it very, very badly. Why? Because he's going against a former President Donald Trump, who is the master tactician of getting coverage at the snap of a finger. Very dramatic in every sense of the word. Biden needs those numbers. He needs those figures. Donald Trump has successfully posted the $175 million bond he was ordered to pay by a court as condition for his appeal. Remember, this was the big issue, the big challenge in the Trump campaign. He was taken to that civil case where he was found guilty of overpricing some of his estates, found guilty, ordered to post bond, about $454 million. He went on and said he wasn't getting the money, appealed, they lowered the money, and he's finally been able to pay it. That in itself is a different conversation because people are saying that demonstrates that there are two different justice systems. for a white candidate, for black candidates. But that's a matter for another day. The settlement has warded off any attempt by the New York Attorney General's office to seize Trump's assets in order to defray his legal debt. So, if this wasn't done, the Attorney General's office would have begun seizing some of Donald Trump's property, which in and of itself, would be a huge embarrassment to somebody who has built his political and personal identity around wealth, profits, and business. The Trump lawyers complained, and this was reduced, and he's finally posted it. So this is where we are in terms of the race, this is where we are in terms of the roundup. But it's also a very good opportunity to take an in-depth look at the profiles of former President Donald Trump and incumbent President Joe Biden. Who are these personalities? I mean, there's a lot that has been said concerning them. But we are going to really go into the details and look at the slides and see what the two personalities look like in further detail. We've already established that it's the quadrennial presidential election coming up in a couple of months, the 60th in the race. So that's the basis for it. Next. Now, who are those personalities? Okay, let's move to the next slide. Joe Biden is on the seat at this present moment. Okay, so this is 101. All right, President Joe Biden, incumbent president. He's the nominee for the Democratic Party. Okay, the Democrats, as they say. And the other dominant figure, Donald Trump. As we say, he's the presumptive presidential nominee, only because he has, in all practical purposes, won the presidential primaries. Although there are just some procedural things that are going on. So these are the two dominant ones. But it will interest you to know that we have other parties in the US, and that's one question that we get a lot. Because most people are familiar with the two dominant parties, but there are other political parties that always contest in these elections. And independent candidates, of course. So in this particular election, Robert Kennedy Jr., of course you remember the Kennedy name, which is a very popular one in American politics. If we go back to the previous slide, he is an anti-vaccine activist, which means that, and while the rest of us were campaigning and mooting for vaccines as a way to prevent and stop the COVID-19 virus, he was staunchly against it for also all manner of reasons. So that's Robert Kennedy Jr., coming off from the Democratic tradition, right? So the question that many people are asking is that, is he going to siphon a lot of votes? Because he traditionally belongs to the Democratic Party. Okay? He traditionally belongs to the Democratic Party, but he has broken off in a way. So it's a major deal, because if most people decide that they are not comfortable with Joe Biden, they might go for him. And this really would affect Biden's votes. And there are a lot of people like that, especially those who are disenchanted by the ongoing conflict in Israel, between Israel and Palestine. Then there's Cornel West, smart, top-notch scholar and academic, former professor at big universities, Harvard, other places, right? Associated with Princeton as well. He's a political activist, Cornel West, African-American, also running as an independent. And we have a physician, Jill Stein, not so popular, but she has also put out her name there to run for the presidency. When we come back to the main candidates, how did they fare in the last election? So that's Joe Biden in 2020, having 51.3% of the votes, and former President Donald Trump, he got 46.8% of the vote. So that's quite a margin. So for all the election deniers or those who still have doubts about the election, well, these are the official results. And it's been proved to all intents and purposes that the elections were as credible as possible and verifiable. But Donald Trump is building his campaign on the fact that he was cheated in the election. So that's what brings about the whole election denial thing. They say they cheated for Joe Biden. And they are still in that stage of denial. And it's a big issue. And some people believe him, by the way. But this is what the facts are. Okay? So we'll move on. After looking at both candidates, let's move on to the next slide. Delving into deeper. So actually, this would be the last. I beg your pardon, talking about the major candidates in the election. So at least that brings us up to speed. With the major candidates as far as the upcoming contest is concerned. Well, but let's do more than that. We are going to be going to Zoom to have an interview, and joining me now to dissect the various strategies, the strengths, weaknesses, and any potential stumbling blocks as far as the contenders are concerned is political scientist Dr. Kwesi Amachi Boateng, who has very kindly joined us this evening. Thank you very much, Doc, for joining us. It's a great pleasure to have you. Good afternoon. Hello, good afternoon, Doc. Can you hear us, please?
Yes, good afternoon, and thank you for having me.
Great pleasure to have you. How are you doing, sir?
By God's grace, I'm good.
Okay, we thank God. So, a number of questions that most people, not just in the US, but across the world, try to contend with. And the first is, given Donald Trump's popularity, right, a lot of people do know that he has very, very emotionally attached supporters. And so looking at that kind of popularity, but then we also know that he's facing a lot of legal hurdles. So there's been a lot of concern about why he's still popular. But do you actually think he could make a huge impact, or he could actually win the upcoming elections? Why is he so popular?
Thank you for the opportunity. Actually, it's an interesting thing. He's a frank matter of fact person. He addresses issues as he sees them, call things by their names and straightforward. I don't know whether that way of doing things of his is what has, if you like, won him the support that he has, especially, from the conservatives, the Republicans, white communities, and then even some, the Americans like to use the expression colored people. He's got support from across the United States. But I think my personal understanding is that it's not difficult to even understand him or even to predict what he's going to do. He's straightforward. I like to believe that straightforward approach to issues, happens to strike a chord. On issues of immigration, people know where he stands. Issues of trade, American interest, American relationship with other countries, he doesn't believe that Americans should sacrifice so much. And so he goes into those issues that ordinarily one would want to refer to as controversial, and he addresses them in a frank, matter-of-fact way. I like to believe that this has won him the support that he has.
That's very true. Actually, stopping his own party in the legislature from passing a compromised, a legislative bill on immigration, which both parties, including the Republicans, had even agreed to. He said he shouldn't pass it because it would be a victory for Joe Biden. So I do agree that he actually fits into those hot button issues. What about President Joe Biden? He's navigating such a huge complex maze of domestic issues. Even in the country, there's the economy, there's international relations, which is very big. A lot of the young people are very mad at him about his continued and rapid support for Israel. How do you assess his chances of maintaining the seat for the Democratic Party?
Actually, he came into office with a huge popularity, coming on the heels of Donald Trump. Donald Trump in office, getting to the end of his term in office, if you like, he, came off as a rash individual, and that he had potential to, if you like, lead America into some difficulties. And again, the economy wasn't doing so well. Eventually, Joe Biden comes in huge popularity. His challenge is essentially the economy, although some people sort of challenge the arguments made concerning inflation and then the value of the currency domestically.
Yeah.
They are challenged. Yet the polls indicate that that is what is on the mind of many people who were or who took part in the polls that have been coming out. Again, Joe Biden's main challenge appears also to be his health, and it has become a major issue. He has stumbled on a few occasions publicly. He fumbled on several occasions publicly, trying to get his words out. And so people are really not very sure that he has what it takes health-wise to lead the United States, if you like, a major power of the world. And that has the potential even to affect many of his supporters. So his major challenge, immigration, the rush to get into the United States, at the southern border. Many people from many countries in South America, a human train, all moving towards the United States. Trump took a very firm, specific, a position on that and simply hit hard. Trump pleased many people. He continues to please them now on that particular issue. It is a challenge for Joe Biden. Immigration, too, the economy, and then currently even the unflinching support for Israel.
Right.
The unflinching support for Israel is
right.
turning negative. Initially, when it started, everybody saw it as the right thing to do. The support for Israel has been normal. But then, with time, they felt that, no, their own values, human rights issues, hospitals being bombed.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So sorry to interrupt you, but I believe you were trying to say that that issue, that kind of support has now kind of reduced over time because it goes against their values. Sorry to cut you in there, but we wanted to wrap up with it, and so I just wanted to make sure that I got that point right before we wrapped up with the show. Yes, so apologies for the interruption, but Doc was trying to explain to us those issues that would potentially be a stumbling block for Joe Biden. And earlier on, he also told us about Donald Trump. Well, thank you very much for joining us on this show today. Thank you to our guests as well for joining us on this program. Our program will come to an end today. Hopefully, you would make time to join us again next week. My name is Eche Sikanku, and this has been America Decides.